Hello, I'm Michelle Makori, and this is Kitco News, and it is my honor to welcome back to the show Robert Kiyosaki, entrepreneur, personal finance expert, and the author of over 27 books, including his latest, The Capitalist Manifesto, as well as the author of the international bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert, welcome back to Kitco. So good to have you.
And thank you. And I'll just repeat what I said when we're off camera. I've watched you develop into a fantastic interviewer. You get to the point, which is good.
That's very kind of you to say, Robert. I appreciate it. And first, I do want to say that I really enjoyed reading your book, Capitalist Manifesto. It is full of valuable lessons that, in fact, transcend the economy and finance and politics. It's an impressive compilation of collective wisdom. It draws from many experts, which I really liked, and it's peppered with wise and historical quotes throughout the ages. So it's a lot of history, it's a lot of economy, it's a lot of geopolitics, an excellent read. But before we dive deep into your book, I do want to pick up where we left off last time, Robert. And last time you were on the show, it was late September of last year, and you called for the biggest crash in market history by late October. I'm interested, though, Robert, why you say that when this equity market crashes, that gold, silver, and Bitcoin are all going to crash as well.
This is going to be the biggest crash in world history. We have never had this much debt pumped up.
Now, markets started correcting in late November, so you were slightly off. Now, it's impossible to time the markets, and I applaud anyone that actually sticks his neck out with such precise calls and predictions. But you were correct in that by some measurements already, the crash that we saw in 2022 has been the most severe on record as a percentage of GDP. If you look at it that way, by June of 2022, the stock and bond markets combined lost roughly $14 trillion in value, and that is equal to 60% of Q1 US GDP, first quarter US GDP. And as a percentage of GDP, the value of this loss was in fact greater than all the market crashes of the last 40 years, including 2008, 2001, and 1987. So you were correct there, Robert. So given where we are now, we have somewhat recovered since June. What is your updated outlook?
Well, unlike some of these other guys who make these bold forecasts, I kind of, part of my books is I do write about what I talk about. So this came out in 2013, Rich Dad's Prophecy. And it says why the biggest stock market crash in history since 2013 is still coming. I got to change the book now, is here. And the reason I could predict it is because, as you know, in 2008, they didn't fix the problem. They made it worse. And so today I'm more bullish than ever on gold and silver and oil, hard assets. And but I can back it up. Unlike some of the other guys, I said it's in my book, 2013. And this is my concern here. Being an old guy, a baby boomer, this is the other book I wrote with a man named Ted Siddell. And it's our pensions are being looted. So the baby boomers are in serious trouble. And that's my concern. And then, we're talking about it. I went to school not too far from where you're sitting right now, in New York. I was on Long Island. I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. So in 65, I had to read this book here. And so my economics teacher at the academy was a West Point graduate. I was Kings Point, and he flew B-17s in World War II. So when I was 18 years old, I'm at school in Long Island, not too far from where you are today. And I ran around Upper East Side a lot. But I read this book here, 65, and 66, I was in Vietnam. And I could see this book coming true. So Capitalist Manifesto is only what has transpired. This book is only like 50 pages. But everything this book, what Marx predicted, is coming true today. And that's my concern, Michelle. I'm very concerned.
And you lay out those concerns in your book, which is a lot more than 50 pages, about 400 pages plus. But as I say, packed with insight and content and historical references. And again, before I want to dive into the book, I want to still start off with an overview of where you see things going. Given your prediction, we've got the S&P 500 already down about 17% year to date. Where do you think we are in this crash? I know Morgan Stanley, for example, saying today that they expect another 15 to 25% correction downwards. How bad do you think this can still get? Where do you think we are in this crash?
Well, like Michelle, I'm an old guy. I'm a boomer. And today there's about 50 million boomers who have retired. And I think we got 250 more to go. So every day, 10,000 more retire. And my concern is it's all been predicted. So this here is a capitalist manifesto. And I said, it kind of looks like this book here. What it says right here, it says in 1959, being a boomer, this is what Nikita Khrushchev said. He was a premier of Moscow, Russia. It says, your children's children will live under communism. 1959, he was telling us this. He says, you Americans are so gullible. No, you won't get communism outright. We'll just keep you feeding you small doses of socialism. And Khrushchev was warning that. And as you'll finally wake up and you'll find that you have communism. So today we're finding out we already have communism. And it says, we will not have to fight you. We will weaken your economy. This is 1959. This guy Khrushchev, it's right in the back of the book. We will weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands. So that's this book here. It's just packed full of warnings we had. But as you know, as my friend Donald Trump says, it's all fake news today. We don't hear any of this stuff. And so that's why I appreciate what Kitco is doing, and because you guys are providing kind of a warning signal to guys my age. I'm 75 years old, and we're in trouble.
Well, I do want to keep it on track on the financial side of things first and foremost, as I say, before we get more into the book. How bad do you think this crash gets, Robert? Because you've said that crashes are an opportunity to get rich, that it's a good time to buy things on sale. Are you adding anything to your portfolio now?
Of course, I'm buying more gold and silver because, people complain to me. I write about in Capitalist Manifesto, these are U.S. Marine Corps wings. I was flying in Vietnam when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So when I was flying in Vietnam, I didn't know what gold was because Americans don't know. So I'm a Marine pilot. I go behind enemy lines, and I'm talking to this little Vietnamese woman with red, orange teeth, because they eat betel nuts. And because gold was $35 an ounce, it was now $50 an ounce the day I was talking to her behind enemy lines. Riveting Marines aren't the brightest guys. So I'm trying to negotiate $50 down to $40. It went from 35 to 50, and I was trying to buy it at 40. And she gives me this little grin with those red teeth. She goes, spot, spot. And I go, what the hell, spot? I'm a college graduate. What is spot? I didn't know. So ever since then, Michelle, I've become a hardcore gold bug because I realized if this little woman, in Vietnam behind enemy lines knew what gold was, how come we don't? And that's when, you shouldn't ever talk to me about should you buy, as Warren Buffett says, never ask an insurance salesman if you need more insurance. Okay. I'm a gold bug. You need more gold. That's all I'm saying. So I don't care what the stock markets are doing. Every time the price of gold goes down or silver goes down, I'm happy because I buy more. Today, I have tons of gold and silver because I have gold mines and I have silver mines.
So you're bolstering your positions in gold and silver. Although last time you were on this show, Robert, you said that gold and silver and Bitcoin and everything was going to go down initially. Yeah. Do you think gold has hit a bottom here then?
Yeah, it's a trading option. Like an options trading. So I every time gold drops, and as you know, I suspect gold and silver are manipulated. JP Morgan was just nailed for manipulating the futures price of gold and silver. Just manipulated. But they're keeping the price low so the smart money can buy more of it. So Jim Records, is a friend of mine. He says pretty soon you're going to wish you had bought more of it because you won't be able to touch gold or silver. And so every time they manipulate the price lower, like they do the stock market and all the price higher, it's a good buying time for me. But you have to know what you're doing, if you know what I mean.
Why do you think he says you won't be able to touch gold and silver? Meaning
because
that?
He's calling for $15,000 an ounce gold. And he's much smarter than I am academically.
But what do you think gets us there?
Well, I don't really care because I just want more of it. What Buffett says, never ask an insurance salesman if you need more insurance. Never ask a gold nut like me, do you need more gold or silver? Because every time they drop the price, I'm very happy.
But what do you think, Robert, happens geopolitically? And these are some of the themes you touch on in the book. What do you think happens globally, geopolitically, from a macroeconomic point of view to get gold up to $15,000, to that point where you say, really should have bought it at 1,700, 1,800. What do you think triggers that massive upswing?
Well, I have a new person I'm recommending everybody listen to. His name is Andy Schectman. He was on Jay Martin's show. And Andy Schectman is talking about how BRICS, what's that, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Right, yeah.
They hate America. And then with the Belt and Road Project or their Silk Road Project, they're now trading in Chinese gold-backed yuan. And they're trading oil in Chinese-backed gold yuan. So it's not if, it's only when. So
Right.
That's why this guy, Andy Schectman, is a great guy to listen to. I had my whole company listen to him system-wide. And because I'm trying to convince my team to buy gold.
The BRICS are reportedly working on some kind of alternative currency,
Yes.
potentially backed by gold. Potentially we're on the verge of the bifurcation of the global monetary system. I hear that. I'm going to shift away from gold to another asset that you tweeted about recently, Robert, and that's tuna. Because you recently tweeted that the best investment is, and I'm quoting you, cans of tuna fish. Inflation about to take off. Best investments are cans of tuna and baked beans. You can't eat gold, silver, or Bitcoin. You can eat cans of tuna and baked beans. Food, most important, starvation. Next problem, invest in the solution. All right, so Robert, go on.
Because tuna is dependent upon diesel, as you know. If the fleets can't get out to get the tuna, they need diesel. So the more when Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline off, discontinued the pipeline from Canada to America, I knew Biden's a communist. What he did destroyed the middle class of America. See, the poor in America is already poor. They'll always be poor. But when he took the Keystone XL pipeline off, he destroyed the middle class because civilization runs on fuel and food.
Right.
So that's why it's fuel and food, gold, silver, Bitcoin. And so when Biden cut off the Keystone XL pipeline, he destroyed the middle class of America. And, he is doing exactly what Marx said to do. Biden is not a good man.
Well, Robert, sticking with this idea of the food shortages that we're seeing, which are very real, we're clearly seeing food supply issues, many of them self-inflicted, with forced cutbacks on fertilizers to reduce nitrogen emissions under the environmental narrative, which you said is a Trojan horse for Marxism in your book, which we'll get to as well. We're seeing this happen in Sri Lanka. We saw how that reduced the crop yields. We saw the protests that resulted in. We're seeing Canada looking at implementing similar policies. But when you say starvation is the next problem, exactly how pervasive and severe do you think this is?
Well, I'm concerned, put it that way. I like to eat.
As do we all, Robert, as do we all. It's one of those life necessities, right?
So that it was kind of tongue in cheek when I said buy tuna cans of tuna, because tuna takes diesel. I also invest in Wagyu cattle. Mm-hmm. Why Wagyu cattle? Because Wagyu cannot be printed. Anything that can be printed, like a stock certificate, a bond, or stuff, dollar, I don't want. So when I was a kid, I used to go watch the breeding bulls at the dairy have sex with cows. I said, someday when I grow up, I was 15 years old. I said, I'd like to be a breeding bull someday.
A 15-year-old watching cattle breed. Yeah, I can imagine that brought up a lot of interesting thoughts back then, Robert.
So I buy a breeding bull at Wagyu because it's a brand. Rich will always have money, as you know. The top 5% will always be rich. So I buy Wagyu because they'll buy Wagyu before they buy hamburger. But the thing about it is with the Wagyu, it's not the beef, it's the semen. And so, and the breeding bull is always, and they freeze it. And then you get a percentage of the cow you breed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say it again. I like gold, silver, Bitcoin, and mines and oil because you can't print it. So I'm a hardcore gold, silver, oil buff, food buff.
And cattle, and frozen cattle, sperm,
yes.
And cattle, and ways to invest in cattle. So for our viewers, Robert, who may be worried about a potential food crisis, what is your advice to them? Where should they be investing?
Well, a lot of people talk about farmland and all that stuff, but I think cattle are great. You can always eat the thing. So I have a lot of Wagyu bulls. And I sell, again, the semen, which is freeze-dried, or crypto, what do they call it? So the rich will always be rich, but that's only about 5% of the population. My concern is, the reason I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is the gap between the rich and poor is too wide today. And when Biden took the XL pipeline off the line and blamed Russia for the price of oil going up, the middle class is toast. The poor will always be poor. But now the middle class is going to get poor. And that's why I talk about, who's told my pension and all this. Because the pensions came in 1974 with a thing called the 401k or ERISA. 1974 was the first year Americans could also own gold legally. So as I write about in my books, I had to smuggle gold in from Vietnam because, I came back into the States in 73 and it was illegal for Americans to own gold, which I thought was really interesting. But that made me a hardcore gold bug.
Right.
So that's why Jim Records and I we're joined at the hip. And I agree. I like his numbers. I think 15,000 is not out of the question for gold.
Does he have a timeline for that? Do you have a timeline for that?
No, right now I'm just glad I can acquire more of it.
Right. Well, you talk about the Biden administration's war on energy. And the fact is that first day in office, the Biden administration did cut off the Keystone pipeline, did impose stricter regulations on the domestic oil and gas sector, and then at the same time gave the green light for the Nord Stream pipeline between Russia and Germany. And we're seeing how that's playing out with the Germans now being held captive to Russia with regards to their energy needs. And a lot of this is under the narrative of climate change, saving the environment, the environmental movement. And in your book, you call that the Trojan horse of Marxism. Expand on what you mean by that, on how the environmental movement is the Trojan horse of Marxism these days.
Well, because nobody's going to disagree with them. Nobody's going to say, yeah, I want the environment destroyed. But this is my friend here, Donald Trump, and I wrote 2 books together, and he warned Germany. He says, you better watch out because you're too dependent upon Russia for your fuel.
That he did.
And the Germans laughed at him. But Trump and I are joined at the hip also, like Records and I. And if they can destroy the middle class, that's what they want. Let me read another quote from Marx. He says, and Biden just appointed 87,000 new IRS agents, Internal Revenue agents. They're going after the small business owner. They cannot touch guys like me. I have too much money. And I have best attorneys, best accountants. But let's say the small restaurant owner or the small entrepreneur, they're going to get them. So this is what Marx said about income tax. He says, well, a heavy or progressive income tax is necessary for the development of communism. And America was founded as a tax-free nation. 1773, the Boston Tea Party. Just study your history.
Yeah.
So these socialists come in under the guise of being environmentalists, and who can fight against it? I don't want the environment destroyed, but they do that, and then they destroy Sri Lanka. They now have carbon credits. I'm making a lot of money off of that also. But I'm concerned of what the communists, the Marxists, are doing to the free world. That's my concern. These are U.S. Marine Corps wings. I flew for the U.S. Somebody asked, did you fly for the Japan Marine Corps? I said, no, I flew for the U.S. Marine Corps. We're immigrants. I'm fourth generation Japanese American. And all my relatives fought for America in World War II against the Japanese, against the Germans, against the Italians. So fighting for freedom is part of my heritage as an American, Japanese American.
Well, you mentioned the taxation, you mentioned adding 87,000 IRS agents, and you do refer to taxation and inflation in your book. You write in the Capitalist Manifesto that, as Lenin warned, and I'm quoting you, quoting Lenin, the best way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. And you repeat a lot of Lenin's lines in the book, a lot of the warnings there several times. One of them is also saying the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. When you look at these lines by Lenin and Marx, and you see what's happening in the country, Robert, do you think that this is happening by design? Do you think that this is intentional? Do you think that this is a question of incompetence or malice?
It's in this book here. I read this book in 1965. It's only about 50 pages. He predicted everything. He says communism would come in two stages. First would be socialism, which happened in 1930, when the Berlin School sent teachers to Columbia University to teach their teachers. And if you remember, you're much too young to remember, but when I was in school in New York, Columbia University was the first school to riot. I thought, well, that's really strange. And then it spread. So by the time I came back from Vietnam, I was being spit on, I was hit with eggs, and it spread exactly as he predicted. The second stage came in 2020. And that was when our election was stolen. Again, I'm not Republican or Democrat, but Trump and I are pretty good friends. And in 2020, when the election was taken, and they say it wasn't, but in my opinion, it was Stalin who said, it's not who votes that counts. It's who counts the votes. And Arizona right now is ground zero for who counted the votes. So all of this has been warned, but our school system will never teach this because most academics are Marxists. They're good people. It's like, being a Marxist, like being a Christian or a Jew or Muslim. It's a religion. It's an economic religion. But they believe in taxing the rich. Ocasio-Cortez from New York taxed the rich. And Biden wants to hire 87,000 new Internal Revenue Service agents and arm them and defund the police. What else can you say?
But again, Robert, do you think that all of this is by design and intention to be malicious with a clear agenda to create a communist America? Or do you think that this is driven by incompetence? Is a saying, don't attribute to malice what can be ascribed to stupidity. Do you think that this is intentional, this move towards the left? Do you think it's an intentional attack on the values and virtues of America?
So Michelle, again, I'm a U.S. Marine pilot, I went to military school. And as officers, we're taught one thing: don't listen to what a person says, watch what they do. And so at Kings Point, which is on the island not far from you, our motto is acta non verba, deeds not words. So I don't listen to what the politicians say, I watch what they do. Appointing 87,000 IRS agents speaks louder than their words. Taking the Keystone XL pipeline offline speaks louder than their words. Opening the border, allowing illegal immigration and sex traffic and narco trading coming in speaks louder than their words. So the reason I write and I say is watch what they do, not what they say. For example, Obama, he's from Hawaii. He's not a poor black kid. He's a rich black kid. He went to Punahou School. I couldn't afford to go to Punahou School. I'm not smart enough either, but Anyway, he went to Punahou School. But his first act as president was to bail out General Motors and the banks. Who does he work for? Not the poor middle class. Obama and Michelle, some of the richest people in America today. How do you do that on $400,000 a year salaries? It's not what they say, it's what did they do. Watch their actions, not their words.
All right, well, speaking of bailouts, Robert, I want to get your thoughts on the recent cancellation of student debt by the Biden administration, because the government is forgiving up to $20,000 of each college graduate's student debt for those making up to $125,000. Anything above that, they don't get canceled. You write this in your book, and you tie it to the concept of a moral hazard. That debt forgiveness, for example, could, now encourage students to take out bigger loans, student loans or otherwise, while passing potential costs onto other taxpayers. Of course, many are very frustrated for what it means for those that did actually work hard and manage to pay off their student loans, for those parents who gave up on vacations or buying a second home in order to pay for their kids' college educations, or for those that said, I'm not going to go to college because I don't want to incur this kind of debt. So it's been a very controversial topic, but polls show that 64% of Americans actually support this student debt relief move. What do you make of this? What do you think the consequences are of this kind of action?
Well, again, you go watch what they do. You look at MMT, Marxist monetary theory. It's what are they doing? It's like Social Security, Medicare. They're turning us into socialists. And then we'll expect the government to take care of us. And that's how I see it. So I admit I got free college education, but I had appointments to Naval Academy, Merchant Marine Academy, and West Point. But I had to pay 6 years back. I had to serve my country for 6 years.
That's not free.
And I paid it back. So what are we teaching by these actions of everybody's free education, free modern Marxist monetary theory? You get paid, but you don't have to go to work anymore. What are we teaching these kids? That's Marxism at its highest form. The government will take care of you. Same as Social Security, which goes bankrupt in a few years. Same as Medicare. And my concern is my generation, the boomers, you're going to have to pay for us. That's the problem.
And another problem that you've been warning about in the book is the debasement of the US dollar. And you cite Lenin's warning several times that he says the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. One of the concerns you mention in the book is the debasement of currency. And then you discuss Bitcoin. There's a chapter in the book, or a little section in the book, titled "The Bitcoin Revolution is On." And I'm going to read that now. It says, the gunpowder revolution brought down the monarchs and aristocrats. It began in Europe in the mid-1400s and was a development that would permanently transform the nature of warfare worldwide. Entrepreneurs, industrialists armed with cannons and gunpowder aimed their cannon at castle walls. And as they say, the rest is history. As monarchies, castles, and aristocratic families fell to cannons and firepower, the bourgeoisie, entrepreneurs who made the cannon and gunpowder, rose to power. The gunpowder revolution, aka the industrial age, spread across the world. The Bitcoin revolution will be bigger than the gunpowder revolution. Elaborate on what you mean by that. The Bitcoin revolution will be bigger than the gunpowder revolution.
Well, I'd like to show you a picture, okay? Because I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad and my cash flow board game because those are capitalist tools. We need capitalist tools because our schools are teaching Marxism. But this here is a financial statement from my cash flow game. And as Maria Montessori said, what the hand does, the mind remembers. So when you're playing the cash flow board game, you've actually got to fill out, this is an income statement, income expense, asset liability. We teach accounting in the cash flow game. This is a statement of cash flow. So those are 3 financial statements. This is what my banker wants to see. My banker's never asked me my grade point average, never asked what college I went to. Banker wants to see this because he wants to see my financial intelligence. But the reason I took a long answer for a short question, this here is Bitcoin. It's an auditor. So what it is blockchain technology audits the Fed, audits Wall Street. So the young people who are coming up today, they want blockchain because we need an auditor. And so when you're playing the cash flow board game, your job is to audit so let's say I'm playing against you. You make a move, I have to audit your statement. That's what blockchain does. And hopefully, to me, the Fed is a Marxist organization because it's a central bank. I mean, read Communist Manifesto. But if I have to audit you, who audits the Fed? Nobody. So that's why I teach, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a capitalist tool. The cash flow board game is a capitalist tool, but it says it right here. Blockchain is the auditor. We need integrity back into our financial system. That's why my wife and I created this board game in 1996. We have to have financial education. We've got to fight back, Michelle. We've got to fight back.
Well, I want to focus on the Bitcoin angle that you touched on there, because many see that, as you quite rightly say, as a way of auditing the Fed and as a way of fighting back. But you recently tweeted a tweet about the price of Bitcoin that got a lot of people, sort of really paying attention. And you were calling a bottom of Bitcoin to test at 1100. You tweeted, "Losers quit when they lose. Bitcoin losers are quitting. Some committing suicide. Winners learn from their losses. I'm waiting for Bitcoin to test 1100. If it recovers, I'll buy more. If it does not, I will wait for losers to capitulate, quit, and then buy more." Now, we recently had a bottom in 2022 of 17,708 for Bitcoin. Do you think it will go as low as 1,100? Do you think it will really test that level that you called out there, 1,100 for Bitcoin?
Well, Michelle, let me ask you this question. If Neiman Market had a sale, would you go shopping?
Depends on what's on sale.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm a high advocate of financial education, which is not taught in school. So in '74, I took real estate courses. I also had to take options trading. So there's fundamentals, which are financial statements, fundamental trading, but there's technical, which ups and downs. So when Bitcoin the first time hit 20,000, I watched it, and it traced back down, I think, to 1,000. And I should have bought, but I was afraid when it hit 1,000, it would go to zero. So it came back, it hit 6,000. So I knew it was picking up momentum, as a trader would say. Trader, not a traitor. And when it hit 6,000, I bought 60 of them. So I'm in the money. So today it's around 17,000. I'm still in the money. So the lesson is, and this goes to all your listeners, your profit's made when you buy, not when you sell. So I'll ask you again, if Neiman Marcus had a sale on Gucci and Prada and all that stuff, you would have said, no, it's too cheap. I want it to go higher. Well, that's what people do. Oh, I want gold to go higher. Then I'll buy some more. Are you nuts?
Well,
so when Bitcoin goes to 1,000, I'm going to buy more.
But that's my question. I mean, Bitcoin, today's price, it's around 21,000. The lowest price it hit in 2022 was just over 17,700. My question to you is, do you really expect it to go to 1,100 to be on such a fire sale? Do you really think Bitcoin is going to test such a low level? I get your broader point that if it does, you're buying because you believe long term that Bitcoin is going to rally. But do you really think that that is the bottom we should be looking for in this current crypto winter?
Again, it's not Bitcoin, it's blockchain. And I'm very optimistic and bullish on blockchain. So if Bitcoin, if it goes down to 1,000, I'm backing up the truck. But if it goes to 25,000, not buying anymore. So your profit's made when you buy, not when you sell. And that's why all these gold people are saying, well, the price of gold hasn't gone up. I said, well, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Do you know, I remember in 2000, gold was 300 an ounce. You're going to wait for it to go to 3,000 or 30,000 an ounce before you buy? But that's what stupid people do. They buy at the top of a market. They all jump in like idiots. I'm waiting for the next crash. the same as real estate. Real estate's crashing right now. I get very excited about it. Oh boy, everything's going on sale. And that's how I think. I am, I don't want to pay retail. I want to pay wholesale. It's common capitalism.
Right. Buy low, sell high. As I said, you just had some people concerned with you calling for that level as a potential low to buy in. But, Robert, big picture, you were previously skeptical of Bitcoin. You told me you changed your mind after listening to a couple of people, including Robert Breedlove, who's a regular on Kitco News as well. And you've also said that you've previously been very skeptical of Federal Reserve instruments like bonds. But you recently tweeted the following, that it's time to open your closed mind about bonds. You said that after listening to Harry Dent, that you're buying U.S. Treasury 2-year bonds. We've had Harry Dent on the show multiple times, said the same thing on the show. I'm just curious, what convinced you to now adopt Dent's deflation thesis and to buy U.S. Treasury 2-year bonds?
Yeah, I was going to buy bonds, U.S. Treasuries, but I listened to this guy, Andy Schectman, again, when he talks about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the gold-backed yuan, and the Belt and Road Project, which is a Silk Road project. He changed my mind. Andy Schectman. So I'm still listening to Andy. I still hold it there that bonds might be a good deal. Just like never ask a financial planner if you should buy Coca-Cola. Of course they're going to say yes. Of course they. But they don't recommend Wagyu cattle and freezing semen. I like that.
So how would an investor get into that, Robert? I hear your point. It's a good point. How would the average retail investor get into buying cattle and Wagyu cattle in particular and cattle semen? How would one even begin to enter that kind of market?
Well, that's why I love your program so much, Michelle. I'm a hardcore hard assets person. I am hardcore. I don't recommend what I do. Please hear me. I don't recommend what I do. But I stopped trusting my government in Vietnam. They would report the news. I listened to Walter Cronkite. You're too young to listen to him. But I'd be watching Walter Cronkite, the evening news from Vietnam. And I'd be involved in many of those battles they wrote about, like Quang Tri and Hue and all that. What they reported wasn't the truth. I don't trust the news at all. So when Trump, called it fake news, I agree with him. So that's why I'm saying what you're doing, what David Lim is doing, you guys are reporting the facts. I respect that. And then a person can make up their own mind. But I just don't trust the Fed, and I don't trust Wall Street, and I definitely don't trust the government. So that's what happened to me in Vietnam. I'm an academy graduate. I went down 3 times in Vietnam. I got knocked down. My helicopter went down 3 times. But I came back more committed to fight for our freedom. I don't fight for Democrats. I don't fight for Republicans. I don't fight for liberals or conservatives or Green New Deals. I fight for our freedom.
It's thanks to people that do fight for freedom that we've had the freedom that many of us are taking for granted these days. Right. You mention a lot about fighting against the Fed. And again, back to your book, The Capitalist Manifesto, where you reference the Fed quite a lot, and you reference Lenin quite a bit in your book. In it, you said that the establishment of a central bank is 90% of communizing a nation, quoting Lenin there. Explain that. Explain to our viewers what that means.
Well, communism is centrally controlled government. It's communism 101, but they don't teach that in school. And I would say also, I came out Rich Dad Poor Dad in 97. I said, what did school teach you about money? The answer is nothing. Is that a mistake? No. It's the same as what Lenin wrote. What he wrote about here is it would come in 2 stages. 1930, they took over the Columbia University's Teachers College, and rioting spread all across the country. For my generation, it was Kent State. They started shooting students for rioting. I got spit on by the Woodstock generation when I came back to California. All the Berkeley hippies and all that stuff. I swear to God, I saw, what's her name? Nancy Pelosi and the crowd spitting on me. I'm only kidding, but I'm going. She's still spitting on guys like me. So I'm a pretty hardcore right-wing Marine helicopter pilot. I still fight for our freedom. You want to be a communist? Your freedom. You want to be a Buddhist? I fight for that. You want to be Christian? I fight for that. But I fight for our freedom. Just don't tell me who to sleep with. You want to be LBGT? I don't really care. I know I like beautiful women like you. You don't have to worry about that. you know, but who you sleep with, not on my business. You want to have a sex change? Knock yourself out. But you don't have to tell me about it. You know what I'm saying? The boys want to use the women's bathroom? I don't think that's right. What about the women? And what about having transgender men swim against straight women? That's not, what are they doing to us? What are they doing? It's worth fighting for, our freedom. And that's why I went to military school. And I paid back my student loan. 6 years of military service.
Well, speaking of your service, which I thank you for, and your time in the Marines, I was fascinated that in your book, you quoted from the movie A Few Good Men, where you had Jack Nicholson playing a Marine colonel. And in there, you referenced that very famous line where Jack Nicholson's character, Colonel Jessup, says, "You can't handle the truth." Tom Cruise says, "I want the truth." And Jack Nicholson's character says, "You can't handle the truth." So, Robert, what is the truth that you think Americans can't handle hearing right now?
Our country is being taught communism via the academic system. School teachers, like my poor dad, they're good people. Don't get me wrong. They just don't know. They've been indoctrinated into communism. That's why, my poor dad was the head of the teachers union, the NEA, National Extortion Association, according to Forbes magazine. The teachers union, the NEA, is the biggest political lobby group in America. And we're already communists. That's why if you read the back of Capitalist Manifesto, what Khrushchev says, you Americans will be fed socialism just a little at a time. And then one day you wake up, you say, your economy has failed, and you'll find you already are a communist. That was 1959, Khrushchev warned us of that. In 1959, I was like in elementary school. I remember it. Going, what the heck are we doing? In 1964, I held up a dime, and the dime was copper. It was this copper tinge. I said, what happened to the silver? That's called debasement of currency. So I was 17 years old in 1964, and ever since then, I don't trust my government. I don't trust our money. So that's why I love Kitco. I love come on to guys talking to you about gold, silver, real money, God's money. You cannot print silver. You cannot print gold. God created it. I'm not really religious, but I'm saying it's God's creation. And I only buy gold and silver for one reason, because if a push comes to a shove, I can spend it. I can spend it anywhere in the world. And that's what that tiny little Vietnamese woman taught me in 1972 in Vietnam. I said, I was trying to negotiate the price of gold down from 50 to 40. And she goes, spot. I didn't know what spot was. I'm a college graduate. How come I don't know this? And then I bought one in Hong Kong. Then I had to smuggle it in because it was illegal for Americans to own gold. How did that happen? You know what I mean? So I just got curious, and I don't trust the school system. My father, poor dad, head of the school system. Good man, honest man. But he never read the Communist Manifesto.
See, the closing words in the Capitalist Manifesto are those of you quoting Mahatma Gandhi. And you say there, the future depends on what you do today. So, Robert, I'm going to close this interview by asking you, what should we do today?
Perfect question. The motto at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, about 30 miles from where you're sitting right now, was acta non verba. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. And that's why I watch what Biden does. He opened the border. I watched what Obama did. He bailed out General Motors and the banks, and he pretends he's a man of the people. Watch what they do. not what they say. Acta non verba. Thank you.
And when we're watching what they do, what should we do? What can we do in response to this picture that you're painting, to the warnings that you put out in your book? What can the viewers do?
I would say to people about gold and silver, how much is enough? I said, I think what Jim Rickards is warning is we're going to CBDC, central bank digital currency. It's a surveillance system. So China already has it. So if I use my CBDC, my Fed coin, to vote for Trump, they'll come get me. So the reason I own gold and silver coins, it's money. This is Andy Schechtman is saying that. I can spend it. So if I want to pay you in silver, I can pay you in silver, or I can pay you in Fed coin. So I just want to have money that's real, God's money, gold and silver. That's why I have a gold mine here. I practice what I preach. My first gold mine on the New York Stock Exchange, the other two were on Toronto Stock Exchange. And immediately after I found gold in China, the Chinese nationalized it. I know what communism's like. I fought them in Vietnam, and they stole my gold mine in China. So I stay in America.
Well, Robert, thank you again. I can tell you what our viewers should do. They can start off by reading The Capitalist Manifesto. Again, it's an excellent book. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us on Kitco, and appreciate the fact that you've written this book, because as you've said, you were quite concerned given the things that you put out there and how you're putting yourself out on the line with pushing back against so much of the mainstream narrative that's being propagated. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate your forthrightness too as a reporter, journalist. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert Kiyosaki, Capitalist Manifesto. And thank you for watching Kitco. I'm Michelle Makori. Keep it right here.